I was given 5 minutes to clear my desk before my husband's father, the CEO, dismissed me in front of the entire leadership team. Instead of breaking, I smiled and said, "Thank you." One by one, 22 colleagues quietly stood and followed me out. Nia sneered until the legal director turned pale and whispered, "Get the lawyer, now." 4 minutes and 30 seconds left, Nicholas announced to the room, his Rolex glinting as he tapped its face. I continued packing my desk drawer, pulling out 6 years' worth of work. Project files, team photos, the backup drive containing every system architecture I'd built for Vertex Solutions. The 12 executives watched in silence as I placed each item deliberately into my cardboard box. Nia Blackwood leaned back in her chair, examining her manicured nails with practiced boredom. She thought she'd won. "For minutes," Nicholas called out again, his voice sharp with authority. That's when Logan Mitchell stood up from his desk outside the conference room's glass walls, laptop bag already in hand. But I should explain how we got here. How 3 weeks of calculated betrayal led to this moment where my father-in-law counted down my professional execution like a microwave timer. Before we continue, I want to thank you for being here. If you believe that dedication and hard work should be valued over office politics, please consider subscribing. It helps more people discover these important stories. Now let's see what Nicholas had planned. It started at Sunday dinner at the Harrington estate, where we gathered like actors in a play nobody wanted to perform anymore. I'd arrived with Taylor and my homemade apple pie, the one with the lattice crust that took 2 hours to perfect. Eleanor always requested it but never mentioned who made it, as if pies materialized from thin air or perhaps the help. "Another record quarter for Vertex Solutions," Nicholas had proclaimed, standing at the head of the mahogany dining table that could seat 20 but usually held just the 4 of us, drowning in its own excess. He raised his crystal tumbler, the whiskey inside catching the light from Eleanor's precious Viennese chandelier. "We're dominating the market because I know how to recognize talent and put it where it belongs." His hand landed on Taylor's shoulder with the weight of expectation and inheritance. My husband glowed under the attention, though his contribution to the company consisted mainly of having the right last name and showing up to meetings he didn't understand. Nobody mentioned the Henderson account I'd saved 2 nights before, or the Morrison Industries contract I'd salvaged by working through 3 consecutive weekends, or the fact that while Nicholas was at his monthly country club whiskey tasting, detecting notes of oak and self-importance, I was rebuilding our entire server infrastructure after a critical failure. "You look tired, dear," Eleanor had murmured, her fingers, decorated with enough diamonds to fund my entire department's salary, briefly grazing my shoulder. "Perhaps you should consider better work-life balance. Appearance matters, especially for women in leadership." I'd swallowed my response along with my overcooked salmon. The truth was I looked tired because I'd been awake for 36 hours straight, but admitting that would only prove their unspoken point, that I couldn't handle the pressure, that I was, as Nia would later write, overwhelmed. The morning routine with Taylor had become a study in marital disconnect. Each day started the same. Him fumbling with the expensive espresso machine his parents gifted us, creating coffee that tasted like burnt disappointment while scrolling through sports news on his phone. "Big week ahead?" he'd asked that particular Tuesday, 2 weeks before everything imploded. "I should hear about the promotion today." I watched his reflection tense in the microwave door. "Right. The promotion." He took a sip of his failed latte. "Dad mentioned Nia's been really impressive lately. She's been staying late, taking on extra projects." My fingers stilled on my laptop keyboard. Nia Blackwood, who arrived at 9:30 sharp and left at 5 o'clock on the dot. Nia, whom I'd been training for 3 months at Nicholas's specific request. "She just needs mentoring," he'd said. "Someone to show her how we do things here." So I'd opened my playbook, shared my strategies, explained our client relationships with the patience of a kindergarten teacher. She'd taken notes in her designer portfolio, asking questions that felt increasingly invasive. "How do you handle system failures? What's your backup protocol? Who has administrative access?" I thought she was eager. Turned out she was building a case. The server migration crisis should have been my moment of vindication. 7 days before Nicholas would slam his palm on that conference table, our entire data infrastructure needed emergency migration. 40 terabytes, 8-hour window, 0 margin for error. Everything went wrong at once. Corrupted files, failed backups, A power surge that shouldn't have been possible. By 10 p.m. I'd activated my emergency protocol, calling in my entire team. Logan arrived first, still wearing the program from his daughter Emma's dance recital pinned to his shirt. "She understood," he'd said quietly, though I caught him checking videos his wife sent from the auditorium. Priya came next, apology heavy in her voice as she called her husband. "I know it's our anniversary dinner. I'll make it up to you." She'd ended the call and dove into code like she was defusing a nuclear weapon. Marcus Thompson, Sarah Kim, the Morrison twins who communicated in what seemed like telepathic programming language, they all came without question. The conference room became our bunker, littered with laptops, energy drinks, and eventually Chinese takeout that went cold before we could eat it. "We're like some weird, dysfunctional family," Marcus had joked at 2 a.m., attempting to eat lo mein with one hand while typing with the other. "Yeah, but at least we chose each other," Sarah had replied, and something about those words felt prophetic now. We'd saved everything. Every file, every client, every contract. Nicholas would never know we'd been 3 keystrokes from losing millions in data and trust. That's what I did. I solved catastrophes so quietly that nobody knew they'd happened. Then came the email. The misdirected message that revealed everything. I'd been reviewing the Henderson account files at 11:47 p.m., preparing my promotion presentation when it appeared. From Nia Blackwood. To me. Except it wasn't meant for me. "Nicholas, as discussed, I've successfully salvaged the Henderson situation. The client was thoroughly impressed with my crisis management. I believe it's time to discuss restructuring. She seems overwhelmed, arrives looking exhausted most mornings. Perhaps fresh leadership would benefit the department." My laptop screen blurred as I read it twice, then 3 times. The Henderson situation. The one I'd personally managed while Nia was posting Instagram stories from a wine tasting. The rescue I'd orchestrated while she slept. I forwarded it to my personal email without thinking, some primitive instinct for self-preservation kicking in. Then I sat in my home office, still wearing the coffee-stained blouse I'd put on 18 hours earlier, understanding finally that dedication looked like weakness to those who'd never truly worked. 3 minutes, Nicholas announced now, his voice cutting through my memory. The executives remained frozen, but through the glass I saw Priya standing up, then Marcus, then Sarah. One by one my team, my chosen family, began to rise. 2 minutes, Nicholas called out, but his voice seemed to come from underwater. Through the conference room's glass walls, I could see the entire 15th floor frozen in a tableau of disbelief. Sarah Kim had her phone halfway to her ear. The Morrison twins stood at their adjoining desks, identical expressions of shock on their faces. I reached for the framed photo from our last team celebration, the one where we'd worked 72 hours straight to launch the Patterson project. My fingers brushed against something else. A USB drive, taped underneath my desk drawer. The one where I'd backed up every email, every document, every piece of evidence that might matter someday. Apparently someday was today. The morning had started wrong from the moment I'd badged into the building at 6:45 a.m. The security guard, usually chatty, had avoided my eyes. The elevator seemed too quiet. The 15th floor felt like it was holding its breath. When I'd reached the conference room to set up my presentation, the one about our department's 340% efficiency increase, Nia was already there. In my seat. The one I'd claimed 3 years ago because it faced away from the glaring morning sun. Her laptop was open to spreadsheets I recognized immediately. My department's confidential budget projections, the ones on a secured server she shouldn't have been able to access. "Oh, good morning," she'd said, that saccharine sweetness coating her words like artificial sweetener. "Nicholas asked me to review these before the meeting. You don't mind, do you?" The question wasn't really a question. We both knew it. I'd stood there, laptop bag heavy on my shoulder, watching her scroll through salary allocations, project budgets, vendor contracts. 6 years of carefully built financial architecture. "How did you get access to those files?" She'd looked up then, and for just a second the mask slipped. Pure satisfaction flickered across her features before the innocent expression returned. "Nicholas gave me temporary admin privileges. To help with the transition." Transition. The word hung there between us like a diagnosis. The room had filled gradually but wrong. David Park from finance arrived first, clutching his tablet like a shield, not meeting my eyes when I said good morning. Then came Margaret Lawson, our legal director, who normally radiated composure but today kept checking her phone, gripping her legal pad with white knuckles. Even the coffee was wrong. Usually, someone would have started the expensive machine by now, the one that ground beans fresh for each cup. Today there was only silence and the smell of fierce sweat barely masked by expensive cologne. I'd started my presentation anyway. Clicked through slides showing our achievements, our metrics, our wins. My voice stayed steady even as I felt the room's energy shifting, darkening, preparing for something I couldn't quite name. As you can see, we've exceeded every target by. The door hadn't just opened. It had exploded inward, the handle cracking against the wall hard enough to leave a mark. Nicholas stood there, his face that particular shade of red that appeared when his blood pressure medication wasn't quite enough. His Italian suit, usually perfect, looked disheveled. His tie was crooked. He crossed the room in 3 strides, his palm hitting the table with enough force to make everyone's coffee jump. Margaret's actually spilled, brown liquid pooling across her legal pad, but she didn't move to clean it. You have 5 minutes to clear your desk. The words didn't make sense at first. They existed in the air, but my brain refused to process them. I stood there, presentation clicker still in my hand, slide 17 still glowing on the screen behind me. A graph showing the money I'd saved this company. That's when I understood the choreography of this morning. Why Nia had my files. Why executives avoided eye contact. Why Margaret looked ready to cry or run or both. This wasn't spontaneous. This was planned. Orchestrated. I had been marked for execution, and everyone except me had known it was coming. Nia leaned back in my chair, and I saw it then. The slight upturn of her lips, the relaxation in her shoulders, the way she examined her manicure with the satisfaction of someone admiring their own handiwork. She'd won something and we both knew it. But here's what 20 years in tech had taught me. The moment when you think you've won is usually when you're most vulnerable. David Park's fingers were moving across his calculator with the frantic energy of someone watching money evaporate. I knew that motion. I'd seen it during budget crises, contract negotiations, anytime numbers were about to become very, very bad. Margaret had her phone out now, typing with shaking fingers, her face the gray-white of old paper. They understood something Nicholas and Nia didn't. Something about contracts and clauses and the very expensive difference between firing someone privately versus publicly humiliating them in front of witnesses. I set down the presentation clicker with deliberate calm. My grandmother's voice echoed in my head. She'd survived the Depression, raised 6 kids alone after my grandfather died, never let anyone see her buckle. When they expect you to break, she told me once, peeling potatoes with hands that never trembled, that's when you stand straightest. Thank you. The words came out clear, genuine even. Because in that moment I felt something I hadn't expected. Relief. 6 years of pretending Taylor's family accepted me. 6 years of Eleanor's backhanded compliments about my appearance while I saved her husband's company. 6 years of being good enough to fix every crisis but never good enough to truly belong. Nicholas's jaw went slack. He'd expected tears, pleading, anger. Anything but gratitude. Behind him, I saw several executives exchange glances. Someone's pen rolled off the table and hit the floor with a sound like a gunshot in the silence. I began packing with the methodical precision I used for system architectures. Each item lifted, examined, placed in the cardboard box that had materialized from somewhere. The backup drive went in first. Then the project files. The team photo. My coffee mug with the chip on the handle. 1 minute. Nicholas announced, but his voice had lost its edge. Confusion was creeping in, the first crack in his certainty. Through the glass, motion caught my eye. Logan Mitchell was standing at his desk, laptop bag already over his shoulder. He wasn't packing. He was already packed. Ready. Then Priya stood. Then Marcus. One by one, like a slow wave building strength, my entire team rose from their desks. Nicholas turned to see what I was looking at, and his face went from red to white so fast I thought he might faint. Nia's expression shifted from triumph to confusion to something approaching panic. "Time's up," Nicholas said, but it came out as a question. I picked up my box, its weight familiar and strange at once. 6 years reduced to what I could carry in my arms. As I walked toward the door, 2 security guards appeared. Standard protocol for terminations, they mumbled apologetically. Tom and Derek. I'd brought them coffee during late-night lockdowns, knew their kids' names. "I'm sorry about this," Tom whispered. "Don't be," I told him. You're just doing your job. We walked through the cubicle farm toward the elevator, and that's when the symphony began. The squeak of chairs pushing back from desks. The rustle of bags being gathered. The soft thuds of laptops closing. Logan fell into step beside me. Then Priya, her heels clicking a determined rhythm. Marcus, Sarah, the Morrison twins moving in perfect synchronization. By the time we reached the elevator, 22 people had joined our procession. Tom stopped walking. His hand dropped from my elbow. In 15 years, he said, voice thick with something between awe and respect, I've never seen anything like this. Neither had Nicholas Harrington, whose empire had just started its collapse, though he wouldn't understand that for another 48 hours. The elevator doors closed on 22 people and one security guard who looked like he'd just witnessed a miracle or a massacre. He wasn't sure which. Tom pressed the lobby button with a hand that shook slightly. Nobody spoke during the descent. The only sound was the mechanical hum and someone's phone buzzing insistently. Then Logan's. Then Priya's. Like popcorn starting to pop, our phones erupted in a cascade of notifications. When the doors opened to the lobby, we walked out into blazing midday sun. The kind of light that makes everything look overexposed and surreal. Maria at reception stood up so fast her chair rolled backward into the wall. Gerald, the maintenance supervisor, stopped mopping and watched us file past. Someone started a slow clap from the loading dock. I couldn't see who, and then others joined in until the sound echoed off the parking garage walls. This is insane, Priya whispered beside me. This is justice, Logan corrected, shifting his laptop bag. We stood there in the parking lot, 23 people blinking in the harsh light, phones buzzing like angry wasps. The Morrison twins were already on their laptops, sitting on the concrete median, typing furiously. Sarah had her phone pressed to her ear, explaining to someone, probably her partner, why she was suddenly unemployed at 11:47 on a Tuesday morning. I should go, I said to no one in particular. My car keys felt foreign in my hand. We all should, Marcus replied, but nobody moved. We stood there like survivors of a shipwreck, not quite ready to leave the sight of the vessel going down. The drive home took 17 minutes. I know because I watched the clock the entire way, unable to focus on anything else. My phone, tossed in the passenger seat, continued its electronic seizure. 3 times I reached for it at red lights. 3 times I pulled my hand back. Taylor's car was in the driveway. Of course. He worked from home Tuesdays and Thursdays, a luxury Nicholas had granted his son but would never have considered for anyone else, especially not me despite my longer tenure and higher position. I sat in my car for a full minute, engine off, listening to the tick of cooling metal. The house we'd bought 3 years ago, with help from his parents for the down payment, naturally, looked the same as when I'd left this morning. Same cherry tree in the front yard. Same crack in the driveway we kept meaning to fix. Same life except everything had changed. Taylor met me at the door, his laptop still in one hand, confusion written across his face. Behind him I could see his home office setup, dual monitors glowing with spreadsheets he probably didn't understand. Why are you home? Are you sick? Then he noticed the box in my arms. His face went through a series of expressions like someone cycling through TV channels. Confusion, concern, realization, anger. Dad called. His voice was flat. He says you lost it in the meeting. Says you were unstable, started crying, had to be escorted out by security. I set the box on our entryway table, the one his mother had given us that I'd always thought was too ornate for the space. Is that what he said? He said you've been struggling lately. That Nia had to cover for your mistakes. That he had no choice. I pulled out my phone, ignored the 100 other notifications and found the forwarded email. Nia's email. The one claiming credit for the Henderson account. The one calling me overwhelmed. The one that was clearly part of a longer conversation with Nicholas the first hadn't been privy to. Taylor read it once. Then again. His jaw muscle twitched. The tell he'd inherited from his father that appeared when reality didn't match the narrative he'd been fed. This is. He started then stopped. When did she send this? 3 weeks ago. Accidentally sent to me instead of your father. And you didn't tell me? Would you have believed me? Or would you have said Nia made an honest mistake, that your father would never plot against his own daughter-in-law? The silence stretched between us like a contested border. Taylor set down his laptop, ran both hands through his hair. Another inherited gesture. I need to think, he said, grabbing his keys from the hook by the door. I just need to think. Taylor. But he was already gone, the door closing with a decisive click that sounded like punctuation. I stood in our entryway, still in my work clothes, surrounded by the life we'd built on a foundation that was apparently sand. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something, instinct, exhaustion, morbid curiosity, made me swipe accept. Please don't hang up. Margaret Lawson's voice, barely above a whisper. I'm calling from the bathroom. The executive bathroom on 16, the one nobody uses. Margaret. Your contract. The clause about hostile termination. Nicholas never read it. Legal reviewed it 6 years ago when you were hired, but he just signed where I told him to sign. Her words tumbled out like water breaking through a dam. The humiliation multiplier alone puts your severance at $800,000. But with documented harassment, the public nature of it, 22 witnesses, we're looking at millions. Millions. Why are you telling me this? Pause. The sound of running water. Because in about an hour, Nicholas is going to realize what he's done. And when he does, he's going to blame me. Say I should have warned him. I've worked here 12 years. I've covered for his temper, his affairs, his questionable decisions. But this is going to end my career. Margaret. Can we meet? Tomorrow. Somewhere nobody from Vertex would go. I have documentation. Things you should know. Things that might help us both. The call ended before I could respond. I stood there, phone in hand, when it immediately buzzed again. Dylan from my former team, had sent a screenshot. A Slack channel called The Exodus, with 247 members before IT shut it down. The messages were a flood of disbelief, support, and panic. Did this really happen? 22 people walked out? What do we do now? Is the Henderson project dead? Who's going to maintain the servers? My LinkedIn app showed 47 notifications. Emails poured in. 3 competitors had already reached out with variations of "heard the news" and "let's talk." But one email made me stop breathing. Catherine Walsh, the venture capitalist who'd turned down Nicholas's pitch 6 months ago, telling him his company lacked innovative leadership. Her message was 2 sentences. Your team's loyalty is worth more than Vertex's entire market cap. Let's build something. I was reading it for the 3rd time when the doorbell rang. Eleanor Harrington stood on my porch at 9 p.m., makeup smudged, holding a manila folder like it might bite her. May I come in? Eleanor asked, and for the first time in 6 years she looked fragile. Not the polished society matron who commanded charity boards and country club committees, but a woman carrying weight she could no longer bear alone. I stepped aside. She entered my home, the home she'd helped fund but never truly welcomed me into, and stood awkwardly in the entryway, clutching that manila folder like a confession. Taylor's not here, I said. I know. I waited until I saw him leave. She followed me to the living room, sitting on the edge of our couch as if she might need to flee at any moment. Nicholas fired his own brother this way 20 years ago. Edward. He was CFO, had been with the company since the beginning. She opened the folder, revealing yellowed board meeting minutes, old emails printed on paper that had softened with age. Edward questioned one of Nicholas's decisions publicly. Not even criticized, just questioned. Nicholas gave him 10 minutes to clear out. The family never recovered. Edward's wife left him. His kids won't speak to Nicholas. 20 years and the wound still bleeds at every holiday. Why are you telling me this now? Eleanor's laugh was bitter, nothing like her usual musical society trill. Because I've watched my husband destroy people for decades, telling myself it was business, that successful men had to be ruthless. But watching him do it to you, someone who saved his company while he was playing golf, someone who made my son happy even if we never showed it, I can't pretend anymore. She pulled out another paper. This is from 5 years ago. Michelle Reeves, VP of Marketing. Fired in a board meeting for insubordination. She'd suggested Nicholas's strategy was outdated. Another paper. 3 years ago, James Chin, head of innovation, terminated publicly because he'd received a job offer from a competitor and Nicholas wanted to make an example. They choose the easy path, Eleanor continued, and now she was looking directly at me. Nicholas and Taylor both. They avoid conflict by creating bigger conflicts. They'd rather destroy relationships than admit fault. I've enabled it for 35 years and I'm sorry. Her hug was unexpected, fierce and brief. She left the folder on my coffee table and disappeared into the night, leaving me with evidence of a pattern I'd been too close to see. My phone rang at 2:07 a.m. I'd finally fallen asleep on the couch, still in my work clothes, the folder's contents spread across the coffee table like a crime scene. Please tell me you're awake. Margaret Lawson's voice was pitched high with hysteria. I am now. Nia destroyed everything. She tried to prove she could handle your systems, wanted to show Nicholas she didn't need the transition period. She was trying to access backup files but deleted the main customer database instead. I sat up, suddenly completely awake. She deleted the entire customer database? That's not the worst part. She tried to recover it herself. Didn't call IT, didn't follow protocol. She ran some recovery software she found online. It corrupted everything. The entire East Coast operation has been dark for 6 hours. They're estimating 14 hours minimum before even partial restoration. The silence stretched while I processed this. Our customer database wasn't just names and addresses. It was 17 years of relationship management, purchase histories, custom configurations, support tickets. The DNA of the company's client relationships. How much? I asked. Conservative estimate? 50 million in immediate losses. That's not counting the clients we'll lose, the lawsuits, the reputation damage. Margaret's voice cracked. She's been in the bathroom crying for 2 hours. Nicholas has been screaming at everyone. He threw a laptop. Actually threw it at the wall. Security is on standby. I felt something I hadn't expected. Nothing. Not satisfaction, not vindication, just a cold, empty nothing. Nia had engineered my humiliation, and now she was drowning in her own incompetence. Margaret, you need to document everything. Every email, every action, every word Nicholas says. Already am. I'm creating my own insurance policy. She paused. Your team could have prevented this. My team wouldn't have caused it in the first place. After Margaret hung up, I sat in the dark, watching the sunrise creep across my living room walls. Somewhere across town, Vertex Solutions was hemorrhaging money and reputation while Nia learned that taking credit and taking responsibility were vastly different things. Taylor came home at 7 a.m. looking like he'd slept in his car. His shirt was wrinkled, his hair stood at odd angles, and he reeked of whiskey and regret. The database is gone, he said without preamble. I heard. Dad's lost his mind. He's threatening to sue Nia, but legal says he can't because he gave her the access. He's calling emergency board meetings. Mom's had 2 panic attacks. He collapsed on the couch beside me, careful not to touch me. He wants me to convince you to sign an NDA and make this go away quietly. Make what go away? His public humiliation of me? The 22 people who walked out? Or the fact that his chosen replacement just cost the company $50 million? Taylor rubbed his face with both hands. All of it. He's offering the $800,000 Margaret mentioned. Full severance, extended benefits, glowing recommendation. All you have to do is sign saying you won't discuss what happened or compete for 2 years. No. The board is threatening his